And yes, so this is the agenda of today's session. We're going to quickly go through what exactly is a case competition in case this is your first time to participate in a case competition. And then we're going to go through the rules of our JHGCC case competition. And then we're going to walk you through the timelines of this year's case competition, which is a bit later than previous years. And we also have the pleasure to have Omkar joining us, who is a very good friend of mine and also last year's winner, first place. He will share some of his experiences and tips for how to actually win a case competition. And after that, at the very end, we're going to have a, depends on how much time we have left, we'll have a Q&A session. So let's jump right into it. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to just speak up or type it in the chat box, and then I will get to it when I see them. So what exactly is a case competition in general? It is basically an opportunity for students to get together, form a diverse team to take on business challenge. A business challenge could be, for example, an organization that is facing a profitability problem, or they're launching a new product. They're seeking to enter a market and how to enter that market. And in terms of your teams, you're going to form a team of 5. Not only you will be competing, I assume that today the majority of us will be students from Johns Hopkins, but at the case competition, you're actually competing with students from all graduate schools from North America. And I believe that last year we have 3 teams, even from Canada as well. And it's really an opportunity for you to really combine your academic and professional experience in a setting outside of the classroom to solve a real business challenge. And during the process of the case competition, you also have the opportunity to network with students within or with outside your school, or even outside our university. And you also have the opportunity to interact with the client judges. And the last thing before we dive into more specifics is the prize money. I'm sure a lot of people are interested in that. In the past years, our total prize money has ranged from $1,000 to $7,000 for the winning teams. This year, we're still in the process of fundraising, and I can tell you that currently we're at around $5,000 for the prize money, and we're still raising, hopefully, to have a little bit more for our prize money. And this is a picture of the past judges. As you can see, we have judges from the major big 3 firms, McKinsey, BCG, and Bain, and also Big 4, PwC, EY, Deloitte, KPMG, and also specialized boutique firms, for example, LEK and Simon Kucher for life sciences consulting firms. So for those of you who just joined, do you mind to mute yourself? And I just muted you. Right, so yeah, I wanted to dive a little deeper on what exactly the case will be looking like. So I'm going to walk you through a past year's case so you know what you're going to be solving. So this is actually a case from 2 years ago. The client was Brainbox, and the case question, or some people call the prompt, was to identify a US care setting in where that the client can implement its technology with the greatest impact, and how they should approach this market entry. So interpret that as essentially a market entry problem. So the client asks you to identify a market, and secondly, on the implementation strategy, how exactly should they enter that market. And you will be provided with a list of guiding questions. For example, which area of the United States has the major customer segments, and based on those guiding questions, you'll be able to form your hypothesis, and then from there you can test your hypothesis, and you will also be provided with a toolbox, which is a book that teaches you how to conduct analysis. And along with that, you will be providing with the data from the client set as well for you to generate insights when you're conducting your analysis. So let's dive into the rules of our case competition. So there are really just 3 major rules for you to be able to participate. When you form your team, since we are a graduate consulting club, you have to make sure that all of your team members are in a graduate level programs. So that includes master students, PhD students, and MBA students or equivalent. If you are graduating this year, or if you're entering your first year of graduate program, you're also eligible to participate this case competition. And the second is that in terms of the degree of your team members, the team must comprise of students from at least 2 degree programs. That means if your team consists of 5 all MBAs, then your team is not eligible. So at least 1 person has to be enrolled in a different program than the other 4 students. And the last one is just the number of students. The teams must have a minimum of 3 members up to a maximum of 5 members. And what you can expect throughout this whole process, starting from your registration and entering your the case phase, and then all the way to the case competition date. So there are mainly 3 parts. The first part is the case phase. So after you, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, you will be submitting your applications. You'll find your teammates and submit your application. So teams who submit successful applications will be accepted and will receive the case. What we meant by successful applicants is that as long as you satisfy the previous 3 criteria, and we will also ask you for a very simple question on why you're interested in your case competition. As long as you give a reasonably well answer for that, I really do mean reasonably well, then you will be accepted. And after you're accepted, you will be given the case. Then you will have 2 weeks to work on that case. And during the first week of the case, and you're also able to ask clarifying questions that might be helpful for you to solve the case. And after you submit the case, in the next 3 or 5 days, we'll give you an answer, or whether if you're selected to the case competition date, which is the semifinals. And there will be up to 20 teams that will go on to the semifinals. And then they will, on the case competition days, they will be breaking down into 5 different breakout rooms. So there will be 4 teams within each breakout rooms. And in the morning on the case competition date, they will compete in the semifinal rounds. So within each breakout rooms, there will be 1 team that will advance to the final rounds. So there are 5 breakouts, and five teams will be advanced to the final rounds. So to compete for the afternoon session. And then for the 5 teams that will be selected for the finals, they'll present exactly the same case. They can incorporate the feedback that they receive in the morning, and then the judges will pressure test them on their solutions, and top 3 teams will be selected as winners. And of course, they'll receive the prize money for that. And this is just a recap of what I've been elaborating. It might not be that clear, but this page should be clear. So there are 4 cases, 4 phases: application phase. Just make sure that you satisfy the 3 criteria. And for the case phase, accepted team will be receiving the case and data. and they are expected to submit one presentation with a recording. And then the case semifinals, 20 teams will be selected to that, and then 5 teams would advance to the next round. And the case finals, you will be presenting the same presentation. You can incorporate the feedbacks from the morning session, and then the judges will pressure test their answers through a Q&A session. Just admitting more students into our session. So these are the key dates for this year's case competition. I think if there's ever a slide that you should take a screenshot, this might be the most important slide, just to save it on your computer to make sure that you are on the right track throughout the whole process. So the application is actually already opened, but I haven't uploaded to our website yet. But for those of you who actually attended in person today, I will drop it in the chat box so you can start looking at the registration. Just to remind me when I finish my presentation. And then on the 6th of May, you'll be it's a due date of your registration. And then on the 9th, we will release the case, and you will have more than, I think it's 15 days to, actually 2 weeks to work on the case, and you will submit your report with a recording. And then in the next 2 or 3 days or so, we'll notify you whether you'll be advanced to the semifinal rounds. And then the May 28th is actually the case competition date, which the semifinal and final rounds will take place. And finally, I'd like to elaborate from what you would actually be learning, and some opportunities that you might be interested in. And firstly, throughout the whole process, we will host consulting Q&A sessions. We'll actually invite industry professionals from the consulting industry to introduce the profession for those of you who are a first-time participants for case competition. And secondly, we'll provide a case competition workbook or a toolbox that will actually teaches you how exactly you should solve a business case from the beginning all the way to the end. So for example, the guide will actually teaches you on how to structure your approach, how to be messy, and how to generate hypothesis, and how to test your hypothesis by priority. And then it also will walk you through how to conduct analysis in a very efficient manner. And lastly, it will teach you how to compose a presentation for the client in a very professional way. And we will also be conducting workshops that was led by our alums, who will be providing case competition tips during the whole process. And lastly, we will host networking receptions between all the students who are participating in this event. So it's really good opportunities for everyone to get to know each other within the Hopkins community, as well as students that's in other universities. I think that concludes my part. So we'll have the Q&A session after Omkar shares his experience. And meanwhile, I will drop the link of registration, and we'll also have the Excel file that for if you don't have any potential teammates for this case competition, we also provided this Excel spreadsheets for you to sign up there. You can look for people who have a similar interest or expertise as you are, and then you can potentially find your teammates over there. So I will drop these 2 links. One is the registration, and the other is the teammate matching form. That's how I call it in the chat box. And I will pass it to you, Omkar.
Thank you so much, Bo. I think we have a few questions in the chat which you can get to, but I would like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Omkar. I am still in my 5th year PhD. I participated in the only case competition of my life last year and happened to be on the right side of things. And I would like to share a few things I learned during that. But before that, if there are any like logistical questions, we might as well answer those. What do you think, Bo?
I think I can quickly get to like the very easy ones. The first one that I saw was, what about postdocs? Yes, you're welcome to participate. And what's the minimum number of teammates? I saw someone answered was 3. Initial submission date and the final case competition date. I will post this recording so we don't have to go back to the previous slides. No, you don't need to be in person. It's a virtual event. Yes, you are Jerry Wang. You are eligible if you're graduating program in May. If you think this adds value to your job hunting or whatever, yes, you are eligible. Do all teammates needs to be from the same institution? No, they don't need to be from the same institution. It's actually better to have a diverse diverse team. I actually find people that are from different programs or different programs or schools perform better because they contribute different perspectives.
I think I'll elaborate on that as well. So just in general, I think one thing you should strongly expect from this case competition, I would say, is that think of this as if you do want to do consulting in the future, right? Like, which I'm assuming a lot of you are testing out waters for. So I would say this is like an ideal breeding ground for you to know what it would be like to work on a case. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get the right answer or you need to know the right answer, but at least no matter what answer you come up with, you will understand the rigor you need to go through, the thought process you need to have to at least attempt an answer. And I think learning that is very important, especially if some of you are not in the MBA programs. If most of, I don't know what affiliation most of you have, is kind of a refreshing change from an academic background, I feel like, because the inherent thought process needs to be different. You can't tackle a case the same way you would tackle a research problem or the same way you would tackle an academic problem that you have in your course. A lot of you have worked in teams before, so I don't need to talk more about that, about the additional layer of working in teams. But I just genuinely feel like that mindset is something that is the first thing you should expect from participating in a case competition. No matter whether your solution gets picked, it doesn't get picked, the moment you attempt this question, I feel like you will get that, at least the flavor of that mindset. You know, what does it actually mean to be in a consulting setting? That's number one. Number two, I think the other thing you can expect from case competition is, I would say, whether you win it or not, I feel like you will definitely expect to solve a problem that is not really in your comfort zone. I mean, sure, if the case comes up in something you do day in and day out, that's great. But that is not how life will be when you move into consulting, and that is not what even at the case competition level you should expect. So going out of your comfort zone, tackling a problem that is not in your day-to-day expertise, pushes you to actually look at new evidence in new sets of eyes and just, you know, develop that critical thinking skill set. I feel like when the problem set, the problem that we had, or the case that we had last year, was so wide, and it had like so many different avenues to explore, that I genuinely learned more about the American healthcare system in a span of 2 weeks than I did in my 4 years of stay here. So I'm not from here. So it was a, at the end, I was like, wow, I didn't know this existed before. So, that's other thing that I feel like you should expect from case competition, just, widening of your horizons. And I kind of want to piggyback off that point in terms of team building, where I feel that don't think of this as I have 4 friends, I want to make a team with them. Or like, I think actively, if you are making a team of 4 people from the same, I know that there is a rule that you can't make all people from the same department, but I feel like if you do that, you're setting yourself up for failure, because I personally think that you cannot get that variety of approaches and variety of viewpoints when solving a case, which is definitely required. If you don't have that, I personally think that you will not tackle the case with as much glory as you can. That's personally my opinion. So I'll give you an example of how my team was made. So I had one other person who was also in the chemical. I'm from chemical engineering department. Sorry, I forgot to say that. So the other person was also in the chemical engineering department. Then one person was in the med campus, also in his PhD. And then another one was also in his PhD, but he had like a vast experience of case competitions. And that is something I think you should manage, that your team, if all of you are completely fresh into a case competition, it might be a little daunting task. So I would say find someone who's done this a couple of times before, not necessarily won them, but like find someone who's done this a couple of times before, or at least once before. And I'll tell you why. Sometimes with these, you need to know what it takes to win. If it was just me and me and other person who had just done this for the first time, I don't think we would have understood how far we need to go. And when we had that approach of someone who had been in a case competition before, that's when we realized like, oh, that's the depth of the solution you need. Like you need to think 2-3 levels beyond what the basic structure of the problem is. So if you are doing cases right now, prepping for your consulting interviews, if not, it's whenever you're tackling a problem, you will divide it into multiple work streams. And in that work stream, there will be an obvious solution right at the top. And if I was just left on my own, probably that's where I would have stopped. But the fact that we had that experience and we had such a diverse team is that we kept digging, and that is what I think helped us very much. So yeah, so just to summarize in terms of team development, make sure there is like a mixture of experienced people and not experienced people, and make sure there is enough diversity. And luckily our 5th member was someone who had a lot of experience in the clinical settings, and the case was also pretty much regarding a hospital, and they wanted to restructure their or they just wanted to reimagine how should they reimagine the hospital of the future. And we had someone who had worked in a clinical setting before, so we kind of hit a jackpot there. But that's something that you need to think of, like when you are building a team. If all of you are from the same experience, same major, you're not going very far. So moving on to any other, I think like this is a good spot to stop and pause. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Or I just wanted to add that so when we meant that not all the people from the same program, the 5 people can all be PhDs, just that not the same major. If that clarifies one of the previous question. So like it could be like all master students, but as long as their majors are different, then you are eligible for to form the team. Yeah.
And the other thing I would say, like, I mean, the team that we had, like, we are still friends. Like, all of us still hang out pretty. I mean, I don't want to use the word frequently, because that changes as you come close to graduating, I guess. But we're friends. Like, we still talk, we hang out when we can. And I think that is something that you should look for. Like you would want to work with people who you would enjoy working with. Like don't never underestimate the part. Like it would be immense fun, because the couple of days before the submission, or like 2-3 days before the submission, like you would be staying up together for a very, very long time, and you want to do that with people you enjoy with, so that it doesn't seem like work, you know. So I would say keep that at the back of your mind. Work with people who you think you can enjoy with. In terms of structure and approach to cracking the case, I feel like one of the best things we did was making sure that we read the case independently for a day. Like when you are released, when you are given a case, of course, like I know the timeline is very short, but every time we used to have like every time we used to get new piece of information, we used to all kind of break out, read that independently, and then come back again to discuss what we feel like. And the reason I feel that is very important when structuring and approaching a case is because usually when everyone comes in, the loudest voice basically takes over. And it's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just how usually it happens. And when that happens, sometimes people who are not very quick on the feet, who have really good points to make, might not get that time to synthesize their opinions, and which means you are just losing out on some thoughts that otherwise would have made your case better. So that's, I think, one thing that helped us a lot, when we kind of every time we used to get new piece of information that was like a big set of information, or like let's say a initial literature survey was done, we again broke out for like a few hours before we convened again, or broke out for a day before we convened again, so that we are not imposing our biases on one another. I feel like it's always a funnel. Like don't be afraid of putting forth as many ideas as possible at the start, and then kind of flesh out as you go them, as you advance, and then kind of keep the last 2 to 3 days just to make sure you're kind of putting those ideas on the PowerPoint presentation and making sure that the ideas are visualized in the way that you want to visualize. That is something I feel like that was very important. Like it's not just important how much work you have done. I think the way you present matters a lot. And that is a big learning, that was a big learning opportunity for me. Because I felt this was the standard. I felt I did good with PowerPoint presentations, but then I came to case competition and I realized I knew nothing. I thought I knew PowerPoint. I clearly didn't know PowerPoint. So those are the things I think eventually I feel like that was a good approach to, like, like on all our behalf, that we were open to learning new tools, open to pushing the boundaries. Don't be afraid to challenge a thought process that you have built, but make sure that all of that happens in that initial top half of the funnel. Like as you start moving towards the latter half of the week in your solution, make sure your structure is in place, make sure your work streams are clear, and then there is debate about what should go in and what shouldn't go in. And do as much work as you like, do the heavy lifting at the start, so that you can get time to pick and choose the kind of story you want to tell. Like again, it can go down in different streams, right? As you move on, I feel like people bet on a structure very early, which is okay. I mean, that's another approach, but I feel like, especially in a case competition where you have 2 weeks, I would say use that first 2 to maybe 3 to 4 days even, to get that the whole information in the upper top of the funnel. Have like some loose ends in general, like what themes you want, but I wouldn't recommend restricting yourself in terms of the kind of information you should go out for. And like the sky's the limit, basically. Like don't just Google and open the first 3-4 links. I would say like read all the reports that, like, I'm pretty sure like Deloitte, McKinsey, all these folks publish reports. There are papers, there will be like it's like a serious literature review. I don't need to tell you about literature review, but like go as deep as you can, and then you can choose what to present. Like don't be shy at the start. So that's a few things about structure and approaching and cracking the case. We also interviewed a few people. We actually conducted primary research. Like we actually called up clinicians. We actually called up a few people, asked them about their experience. We also got an analog case study where something like that had been implemented. Like we literally called up someone who was working in that hospital and asked them, how do you feel about this? So don't be shy to do any of that. Like that is what we call as those in the know-how might know that, like something that we call as KOLs, right? Like don't be afraid to have that KOL interviews, key opinion leaders, like we call it. Like just think about all you would do if this was a real consulting case with money on the line. And money is on the line, I'm assuming. There is a lot of prize to be won, I'm pretty sure. So that is something I feel like. So in terms of to summarize all this and learning from the process, I would just say that the experience was immensely valuable for me in terms of just understanding how to work on a case, just understanding how to work with people I have never worked with before. Or like I found out how my friend works professionally, and that was a completely different person than who I knew her as a friend. So, like you will be in for surprises. So in general, like how to work in a group dynamic is something that you will thoroughly like enjoy. You should thoroughly enjoy and at the same time learn from this. The second, I would say, as I said, like presenting in a group meeting, presenting at a conference, and presenting at a case competition are like three completely different beasts. And that is something that you will probably learn from the process. If most of you are from the academic background, that is something that I feel like that was the biggest value add in my life about like how does the structure, like, I mean, of course you will have sessions, like I'm pretty sure there will be sessions, but like message first, explanation later, right? Like when we are usually doing otherwise, we give the whole evidence at the start and then give the conclusion in the end. So it's usually reverse. You have to give your conclusion first. You have to report your best findings at the start and then go back and explain the whole story. And lastly, I would say this is probably a minor point, but I feel like it goes a long way, is I think you also learn how to be concise. I feel like, I mean, everyone has a habit to blabber, but because the case competition allows you only some X number of minutes, right? Like 7 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, to present your entire work you have done in the 2 weeks prior, you have to choose your words very wisely. And every word you use has to mean something. And just being concise has its own value in the consulting world. Like if there is a person who can tell me the same exact thing in 10 words versus someone who is gonna take 1,000 words to tell me, I'm always gonna listen to the person who's gonna take 10 words. So seems minor, but I think developing that and having that tighter storyline is, I feel, very, very crucial and helped me a lot when I went for my interviews. And that was something very, very that I would take with me for the rest of my life. So I think I've spoken a lot at this point. So if there are any questions, feel free to ask us. Thank you.